Welcome to episode 17 of Tales from the Bridge. I'm Tristan.
I'm Marty.
I'm Sam.
I'm Kevin.
And in this episode, we are talking about Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Our last episode released before this one, we talked to Adrian, so if you haven't checked that out, go give it a listen. All right, we've got a lot to talk about this episode. Let's make our way over to the bridge.
I don't know if you guys have heard about this bot that they presented about. It's a humanoid robot, about 5'6", I think, or 5'8", or thereabouts, and it's not supposed to weigh more than 125 pounds. But the intent of it is that they can leverage a lot of the Tesla radar object recognition AI software that they're using, and put it into a humanoid robot to help out around the house or in the workplace. So they announced this a couple weeks ago, and of course, this coming from a guy who's fearful of AI taking over and superintelligence and the whole bit. But he said clearly that it would be designed in such a way that people could overpower it. So it would be weakish. Like it wouldn't be, you could win an arm wrestle against this robot. But they're planning on building it. They're hiring engineers. They've got a plan for it. And they want to launch it, and they're trying to send to the message out to the market that we're not just a car company, we're an AI software company. What do you guys think of that?
It's our doom. Doom. This is where it begins.
Well, I'm just incredibly impressed that the guy that did PayPal and then Tesla and then SpaceX and then now robots and then Neuralink. Geez, is there no end to this guy's he's just handling all of science fiction industry, I guess, in his lifetime. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? I mean, it'd be like a butler. If I'm not entirely sure what the use cases for it would be, but I presume you could say things like, "Hey, Tesla bot, go to the fridge and get me a beer," or "Make me a coffee." Right? These are the sorts of things that I imagine that it could do for you.
Yeah, I think the idea of having C-3PO. I mean, that's essentially what he's saying. Is I want C-3PO. I want a bumbling little kind of golden butler going around and who I know I can beat up if he decides to turn on me. And
right.
Yeah, I'm game for that too.
Yeah.
And I think it's there are many dangerous tasks too, right? That's one of the goals is to eliminate some of the dangerous jobs that humans do right now. Give them over to the 100-pound wimpy robot, because when its arm gets ripped off, it's like, oh, cool. Get him a new arm and put him back on the line.
Yep. And the thing is a lot of people hear about this and they're instantly concerned about job loss, which is a very valid concern, right? However, right now we're in this human capital crisis. We can't hire for so many different jobs, in particular, a lot of, retail and a lot of service positions that are, seemingly undesirable. This could fulfill some of those positions without having to make huge, big assembly lines, right? You don't have to have this huge automated system. Just chuck a few Tesla bots at it. Not to minimize the social concern of job losses because of technology, but I could see it being a net benefit.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget, in 20 years, they've sort of talked about this in terms of coding. You'll just need more coders. You need more people to write that code. And that'll be the new sort of service industry job. The sort of new blue collar job will be, people copying and pasting something from a big bootstrap database into whatever it is, they need to build or configure this robot or machine to do. And that's where those jobs migrate to, I think. When you have kids who can write code in grade 7, now it's not a big deal. They feel, the less ambitious ones, essentially, to speak pragmatically with, my HR hat on, go in that direction. And then and those roles that they've been replaced in, they end up servicing the service roles, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure though. Service industry, I guess the way, another way to split it is skilled and unskilled labor, right? Mm-hmm. And if we eventually replace all unskilled labor, just meaning that means labor that doesn't require training, and possibly years of training. Like I don't see, the people that currently barista, not to say anything against them, but like, those aren't the people that are going to be writing code. Like that takes focus and energy and like a certain kind of brain and training, and maybe coding will get easier. But it's like, just like those aren't the people that you're going to have like in a newsroom writing copy, right? Like that takes a certain facility with language and
No, what I'm getting at is more, and I don't think it fully fills that gap. You're right, but I think some of those jobs go to a more user-friendly coding role that becomes necessary. That we're coding today. Someone who writes Java or C++, does web development or that sort of thing. That still takes a lot of skill to learn, and but if you have kids sort of coming up through grade school and you have more tools to make using those, so they copy and paste something from something like Bootstrap, which is just a database of like chunks of code that can be dropped in because it's like, someone else has already done the work. So they drop it into it's on an open source database and you can just go and copy and paste it. So I took a web development course and essentially I just copied and pasted all the code that I used to create a website in the most Neanderthal way possible, right? Like I just like copied and pasted off of Bootstrap and cobbled together a really crappy website. But I could see where 20 years from now, 25 years from now, that process becomes way more refined and gets sort of windowized in a way that makes it easier for people with less education and skill to sort of fill at least some of those roles that they're replaced in by someone having to come in and fix and update and work on it. I have a family member who works in a factory and he started out on the line and now he fixes robots, right? Like, so I'm thinking of it in a sort of down 20, 30 years down the road version of that, where it's someone in his role, where, instead of working the line, they're servicing the robots on the line, right? Like, and that's kind of already happening, but there's fewer jobs for sure. Like the field of jobs there is definitely greatly reduced, but it's at least something of a sector.
Or maybe this enables the Carl Schrader robot utopia in lockstep, where every person has their personal robot that while they're asleep for 30 years, it goes off and gathers resources and works for you. And those individuals get paid and they live in this kind of semi socialist / capitalist utopia, right? Maybe we'll all have our own Tesla bot and they go work for us.
Well, and then the Tesla bots hire other, lower echelon bots, right? Like that's the beautiful thing I thought in his book, right? That like they're all getting other people to work, like the bots are getting bots to work for bots, and then eventually the money just sort of filters up to the top. I mean, that seems pretty okay. Here's another way to maybe flip this idea on its head. We're sort of thinking of these Tesla bots as unskilled labor right now, like, oh, they can get me a coffee. But I'm wondering, like, okay, well, dangerous jobs. I don't want to get on my roof. Can I, if I lose a ball up there, can I climb a ladder? Can I get up there, take something down, and then, well, maybe can it do a roofing job, right? Like maybe they could handle a hammer and do all that stuff. I mean, it would have to be stronger, I guess, rather than intentionally weak. But imagine that this goes like Matrix style, right? Where you download skill sets into this bot. And so, whatever you need, there's just an internet of skills for jobs. And you need a car mechanic, zip. You just downloaded a car mechanic into your bot, right? That's super great and very cool. But yeah, it would certainly screw with the economy. And we'd need a whole different system probably to once we have a downloadable, skilled robot that can do kind of anything we can do.
Or what about this? What if they're not quite skilled enough? So kind of like what the automated self-driving cars have currently, you still need a driver behind them because they can't handle all circumstances. Somebody sits at home with their VR goggles on and their little Nintendo Power Gloves on their hands, and they tell their bot to go walk to a work site and go hammer that piece of wood in there, and then when it doesn't know what to do next, you take control and you modify it and you adjust the job. So suddenly you become a technician handling equipment that is able to do a lot of the menial work, but not 100% of it.
That sounds cool. Yeah, you're like a conductor of an orchestra of robots that handle larger and more complex jobs.
Yep, semi competent musicians. You have to step in every now and again.
Thank you for that segue, because I have one more thing to add. Speaking of semi-competent, so I have a little bit of skepticism about AI and whether it'll ever actually get there to be able to think and do things the way we do. So I recently had a little meme on Facebook that I would love to read to you apropos this topic, and it's titled "Bot Obituary." So you know how you can take a bot and you can train it on various different kinds of data sets, right? You can get a bot to write a film script by feeding it lots of film scripts to read and train on. So this bot has been trained on obituaries. And here's the obituary from the bot.
Okay.
I would love to credit somebody with this, but I just have a picture of the writing. So I'm afraid whoever you are, well, I guess it's the bot that I want to credit, or whoever wrote the bot.
Exactly.
So here it is. Brenda Tent, retired from living at the age of old, surrounded by family and natural causes. A librarian from birth, Brenda was an avid collector of dust. She had a sweet heart and married her high school. She loved having hobbies and helping her sons to be disadvantaged youths. She had no horses, but thought she did. The church gave her a choir because she sang like a bird and looked like a bird, and Brenda was a bird. She owed us so many poems. The funeral will be held in 1977 at Heaven. In lieu of flowers, send Brenda more life.
That's awesome.
Foundation. I've been listening to the audiobook, and it's not even that long of an audiobook, but it's taken me 2 months to listen to because I don't drive much and I'm not home much. But I'm a little bit disappointed with Foundation. I read it when I was maybe a late teen, early 20s, and I liked it, but I read a lot of classic stuff from Asimov and Bradbury and Clark. So listening to it now, because the show's coming out soon, the series, I'm underwhelmed. It's intergalactic gossip. It's like Game of Thrones in space, and I'm pretty sure that's why it was greenlit for a TV show.
Right.
Because they were like, oh, we can just make people talk about each other and create wars in space, just like they did with Game of Thrones. I think the second last season of Game of Thrones I actually enjoyed, but everything else that I saw of that show, I was very bored.
All right, well, I got to get
Piece
in
of
here.
junk.
Game of Thrones is awesome, and you're
It
totally
sucks.
wrong about it.
You're wrong.
Game of Thrones
I'm
was
with
like
you, Marty.
superior
You're
television
both
by
wrong.
far, and writing.
I watched
Flash,
them all.
Burn and screw. Go for it, man.
Fantastic. Well, let me say then, and continue along this vein. I really hope they make Foundation exactly like you say. They make it like Game of Thrones in space, because A, I like that, and B, Foundation was really boring. I read it twice, and I was again shocked the second time I read it. Like, wow, this really wasn't that good.
It's intergalactic gossip.
But it's dry. I mean, God, it's like everything Asimov writes. There's a couple great ideas, a couple sort of, genre forming ideas. And so he deserves the credit for, what he did in terms of, leaving these stories behind for us as touchstones for all of future science fiction. I mean, Foundation was a great idea. It certainly deserved to be made into a TV show, and I hope they do. But it could be a lot more entertaining, and I'm sure they're going to make it much more entertaining.
Well,
so
let's
yes,
just add a little
Foundation
bit of
with sex and smut and
put
violence.
some
I'm all for it.
boobs and
Totally for it.
half your penis, and we'll get some viewers.
Yeah, that's right.
Apparently, that's what you need to do these days.
Well, I have a really difficult time with the classics. I know it's based on the time that it was written, but the misogyny is so painful. The one-dimensional female characters, and I find it so hard to read. I can't get into them these days. There you go. I've been reading a book too, and I too was considering bringing it to the sci-fi group. However, I decided early on in reading this one that I would not. So this is an author named Neil Asher. I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with his writing.
I see him at the thrift stores all the time.
Yeah, he's pretty prolific. He's written a fair number of books, and they're all around this general theme of this far future. They call it the polity, where it's AI controlled, and humans are happy little symbionts that are living inside of this world run by AIs, kind of like E&M Banks, only the AIs aren't quite as witty and funny and cool. I think his world's much more dark, and it's characterized as hard sci-fi. And I don't think that I would necessarily characterize his writing as hard sci-fi in as much as I understand what that actually means. It's just he has a lot of ideas, and the ideas are half described and very action-packed. It's constantly action-packed. It is exciting, but the plot meanders. It's almost like a stream of consciousness plot where I just want to throw this idea in and I want to throw that idea in, and we have an investigator who's studying a big disaster or trying to investigate a big disaster, and there's these criminals that are trying to kill him. So there's lots of intrigue that could have taken place in any universe, and it's good. I mean, it's fine. If I were to read it as a book club book, I would probably say, yeah, it's good. But I wouldn't say it was great, right? So this is the first book in his series, this Polity series, and maybe it gets better because he has some really ardent fans and people who love his work. I just haven't gotten there yet. Granted, I'm only about maybe 70% of the way through his first book. But yeah, Neil Asher, it's neat, but not one I would bring to the book club.
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
I'm reading Velocity Weapon. This is part 1 in the Protectorate series, and so I just I don't know how I got sort of turned on to it. I think they said like my key word for any series when they say that it's a space opera. I'm just like those are like little key words for me that just attract my attention like a shiny blinky red light, and so that's. Apparently, these days, if you've got more than like one planetary system, it's a space opera. And I'm starting to, struggle with that whole term because I keep getting led down the garden path on it. And but it is interesting. But I'm not. It's the slowest reveal I've ever read, and I'm 50% through. And every few chapters, there's kind of another reveal. Yeah, I'd like you guys to read it too. Like I'd love to sort of bounce it off you guys because I feel I'm not sure how I feel about this one, and I need the book club to tell me how to think about it, how to feel about it.
Well, that's a good segue for me too.
Kevin's gonna love it. Marty, and Marty will ruin it for you.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll try to be in between.
Have a book that I read sort of at the same time as Shards of Earth, and I was really thinking hard about putting it on the list and having this be my choice this month, but I've decided against it for various reasons. But I do want to talk about this book and this author. So this is Nalo Hopkinson's first book. We saw her when you guys came over for the Nebula Awards. She won the Grandmaster Award this year. She's a Jamaican-born woman who she's lived in Guyana, Trinidad, and Canada. She spent a fair bit of time, I think, in Toronto. This book is set in Toronto, which is always dear to our hearts, of course. It's great seeing stuff set in Canada for Canadian readers because we don't see that very often. and it's sort of in this future dystopian kind of broken down version of Toronto. And the reason, and again, I was very conflicted. I kind of liked it. I kind of didn't. It took me a while to get through. By the end, I was all in, I got to say. And that's because of the writing. Like, it's really, now I see, these books are not being published anymore, but she won the Damon Knight Grandmaster Award. And so this was something I wanted to understand. Like, why is this sort of author who's being honored, who, has written a lot of books, but she seems almost completely out of print. I went to, a bookstore in Vancouver, White Dwarf, which is amazing. They have everything sci-fi there. And she told me, like, no, we don't have any of her stuff. It's all out of print. So why is that? She's won the John W. Campbell Award. She's won the World Fantasy Award. She's won Canada's Sunburst Award. She's on the New York Times summer reading list, like on. And then she won this like Lifetime Achievement Award, and yet we can't get her books. So I ordered it used. It was not what I expected. It was certainly very different than I expected. But it was so well written. Like, it was just really well written. The language is exquisite. You can tell this is sort of a master. And so that's why I want to talk about it. The quality of the writing, and it's very difficult to describe what it is about it. It's just a well-structured book. It's a well-structured narrative. The plot all sort of comes together at the end. The characters are very vibrant. It's not necessarily a world I love and want to spend a lot of time in. And it's not necessarily sci-fi, and I think that's what kind of made me tentative about it. It is more fantasy, I would say. It's sort of, future-based or future-set fantasy with, magic and voodoo kind of thing is sort of the main kind of strange, interesting, fantastical part of it. It's pretty dark. There were some parts I did not enjoy reading, but again, just masterfully written. So I will have to say that even though I'm not going to bring this book to the book club, Brown Girl in the Ring is the book. I'm not sure I mentioned that. So that's her Nalo Hopkinson's first book. And it was really impressive. So check it out if you can. Check out her other writing. I think is really good. It's certainly very different. Again, it sort of brings a lot of diversity to the kind of stuff that we usually read. It's very, into different cultures. It's even written in a Jamaican accent. So, you have to really kind of hear that voice in your head to roll with it. And the names and everything is different than what we usually see. So, Nalo Hopkinson.
The book of the month is Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And none of us had read this. It just came out in 2021. So there's 3 books in the series. I think Adrian had said that the second book was written, did he not?
It's done. The third one is too. He said he just handed it in. He is way ahead, is what we learned.
They're with the publishers.
Unbelievable. So Shards of Earth starts us off with the first space opera from Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I blasted through this book. Just absolutely loved it. I didn't get everything I wanted out of an Adrian Tchaikovsky book by the end because of reading Children of Time, which is one of my favorite books. That book is so good that, Adrian is going to he's going to blow that book away at some point, I'm sure, because he just seems like he's a literary genius, in my opinion. So he's going to get there. With Shards of Earth, it's not that it wasn't as good. It was completely different. So Shards of Earth is a space opera, and you have some of the most likable characters that I've read in a long time. It kind of reminded me of the Becky Chambers team. Super likable characters traveling through space and going on an adventure. But in Shards of Earth, there are definitely higher stakes than Becky Chambers' book. Something simple that Adrian does in this book is Rollo is the captain of the ship, but he refers to his crew as his children and his sons and his daughters, but more so his children. And I found that extremely endearing. Like, Rollo was, I was very surprised by how far that little device went. And I guess we should talk about the premise of this book. 80 years ago, Earth was destroyed by an alien architect. Some escaped, but millions died. So, to protect the colonies, humanity shaped the minds of Idris and others into weapons and sent them into battle. Then the architects disappeared. And what happens is the architects seem to have reappeared. And we don't know why or if it is actually them. But we get some, like I said, very likable characters. We get intriguing story because we kind of go on an adventure from planet to planet a couple of times or a few times. And the way that Adrian Tchaikovsky writes his stories, they just kind of, the pages just flow and the pages turn themselves. I can't believe how chunky this book is, but how easy it was to read. And that is the sign of a favorite author for myself. Children of Time and Children of Ruin, same thing, which are the only other two that I read of his. They're kind of chunky, but the pages just turn so easily because the way he tells the story, it's so relatable, it's so easygoing. He gives you the detail you need and the adventure that you need, the information that you need, likable characters that you need. He gives you everything you need, and this guy is going to take sci-fi by storm. He's doing an amazing job. And I can't wait to read the second book. I wonder where it goes because I wanted it to go certain places that it didn't go in this first book. So knowing that he has the next two books written is so exciting. Where are they going to go? I don't know. I think I know. I hope I know. I hope the good guys win. And I'm sure they will. But if the good guys lose, that would be even better. Tchaikovsky will surprise you. But I can't believe his ability is, it's refreshing to read a new author do what he's doing. So I am so happy with Shards of Earth. A little bit let down that it didn't, I guess, surprise me or excite me as much as Children of Time. But the thing is, Children of Time is a biological sci-fi. And that was a fantastic book. This is nothing like that. So it's kind of incomparable. So that it shouldn't be used against it.
Well, I think you're right. They're definitely apples and oranges. But I am going to say the same thing, but different in that I love Children of Time and Children of Ruin, and Adrian's writing so much in those that this was, and I didn't say this, in our interview with him, but I was disappointed in this book. I thought it was
I am
shallow.
deleting that. I am deleting that. I'm taking it out.
Not allowed. Not allowed. It was good. It was, it was a space opera, but it's not what I read sci-fi for. Like it could have been fantasy as far as I'm concerned. It could have been historical. It's just, it's a story with characters that happens to be in space and happens to have some aliens and spaceships and things. But yeah, it fell a little flat for me, especially by the end. I thought something amazing and different. And there was a twist. There's something he really brings you to, and he sets you up for the next book. But it just didn't grab me. Like, I don't know. Even the characters, he's really good at doing a certain thing, right? We talked to him about this, and you should all listen to this interview. But we talked to him about, what he's good at is describing the alien, creating empathy for what is alien and different, right? He doesn't do humanoid aliens. It's always something weird. And in Children of Time, it's spiders. In Children of Ruin, it's octopi. In this one, it's a clam or a mussel or mollusk or something is I guess the weirdest
but your two main characters are still human.
That's true. I know. But he dreams up some cool characters and cool aliens and all of that, but like what I fell in love with his writing for was that he uses sci-fi to like give you this philosophical gem or give you this sort of really insightful thing about evolution, about biology, about psychology, about, working together, about humanity. And there was just nothing like that in here. And I get that it's apples and oranges and there isn't supposed to, Children of Time was hard sci-fi. This is space opera. Those two are very different. but it was a bit of a cowboy romp, which isn't, what I'm up for. I'm not sure I'd read the second book. I think I might if you're really into it, if you tell me it's really good, and if I still trust you by then.
Wait, but you like Star Wars over Star Trek?
I like Star Wars movies. I like Star Wars movies over Star Trek movies. I can't read a Star Wars book, though. I did try. I tried my first one. I couldn't get like 3 chapters in. It was exactly that, right? Like this is not the book that I'm after. These are not the droids I'm looking for. Anyway.
So for me, this was similarly, it wasn't exactly what I was looking for from Adrian Tchaikovsky. Like he coming from those other 2 books, I was expecting something different. However, in his interview, he said this is his first attempt at space opera, and I didn't get any real sense of a lack of confidence around the book, but I did definitely kind of hear him espousing that this was something different for him, and but he did it artfully. He said I wanted to be able to talk about FTL, and here was a situation where I could do faster than light travel and just wave my hand around and it would work. And that's okay, because he gave himself social license to be able to do that. So he created this idea of unspace and navigating through unspace with these navigators. If the human version of the navigators are, their minds are altered to be able to allow them to be able to perceive unspace and not go demented because of this weird presence that exists in the unspace. So the whole concepts are not scientifically plausible, obviously, but really neat ideas, and kind of cool. You wonder what this weird presence is in space, and so it gets you. It kept me reading. So I certainly, there was never a moment throughout this book that I didn't want to keep reading, and I will read the next book, like without a doubt, even though it wasn't what I was looking for from Adrian Tchaikovsky. The writing was excellent, and we've learned from him in his interview that he basically writes it and requires very little editing. So what he's putting down on the page is almost verbatim what tends to become published, which is phenomenal. And I thought his characters were definitely very relatable. It is a space romp, but those are enjoyable too. I also prefer hard sci-fi books, but I liked this. I liked this and I mean, again, I like a lot of sci-fi, but this was very well written, and the ideas within it did make me go, huh. Like the idea of those lobster-like mollusk creatures that are revered, that they've orchestrated an entire religion of different aliens to revere them as gods because they can protect them against the architects. Like that whole concept, I don't know where that comes from. He said in the interview also that he thinks about world building a lot, and he generates the world, generates the universe, and then writes the story within it. The amount of world building that he did to create the Shards of Earth universe is phenomenal, right? Like I imagine he must have written down like a tome of narratives about what this world was like on space, and these mollusk god creatures, and the way that humanity is interconnected with it. So yeah, I enjoyed this, and I will read the next one as well.
A bit of a disclaimer. I come from, my gateway into sci-fi was through fantasy. So swords, horses, knights, all that kind of stuff. So sci-fi fantasy is like right in my wheelhouse, and I'll just start obviously clearly. I love this book. I thought this was great. I thought this was like an acid trip in terms of, creativity. This sort of reminded me a little bit of like the Inkle and the Fifth Element. And I love that sort of creative sort of push into what I think is a real space opera, or my favorite kind of space opera, where there's this sort of real diversity in the worlds and aliens, and there's this creativity that gives it this sort of richness in its world building that continually surprises. And for me, that really brought me in. At first, I was like, I remember like reading that first chapter. I was like, I feel like we're headed down a cheesy road, and I was a little concerned. And then it took a churn, and it took another churn, and then I was totally sold. And So for me, this is what I like, the kind of book, or the kind of space opera that I really do enjoy, where someone has poured a lot of creative energy into it and pulled it off, because there's a lot of risks there, right? Like, a cult of space mollusks on paper, like just the way I said it right there, it doesn't go over well, right? And it's pretty rough, or unspace, or you need these like demented navigators to take you through unspace. Actually, no, that sounds cool when you say it out loud. So it's, for me, I was only disappointed that not all the characters make it through, and I won't give any spoilers, but just talking about, like, you immediately kind of fall in love with the characters, and that's what I want. I want really strong, vibrant writing that draws me into the characters. It makes me want to love these characters. I'm not here for the science. I do enjoy the genre of sci-fi that doesn't explain itself completely. It just says, we got a button, we press, and we go 3 galaxies over, and I don't feel like explaining why. Perfect. That gives us, just opens things up for going wherever you want to go, to eating your edibles and just taking off, man. Let's go there. And I'm all for sci-fi that doesn't feel like work. And that when I come home from work, I can sit and I truly escape into this total fantasy world. And he did, I think, the finest job of doing this sort of fantasy sci-fi genre that I think we've read since we've come together. And we've read some good ones. It's not a space opera in the vein of The Expanse, which is very pragmatic and practical and looks at what are the realities of humans in space and how far could we actually get and live and all these sort of things. And there's no restraints on this genre of sci-fi, and that's why I have a special place in my heart for it, because it's just I'm gonna arrive and I'm gonna forget where I am. I'm in that universe and anything can happen, and it's amazing. And it reminds me of all the things I loved about comic books when I was young, and all the nostalgia I had about Star Wars, or all these sort of things that draw me to this genre, because I'm not reading about someone at work or having to sort of overcome the sort of hard facts of the world that we currently live in. Is a true escape, and I absolutely 100% recommend it. It is I only have 2 thumbs. If I had a third, I would give it for this book, and I can't wait to see what's next. And it just makes me want to read now Children of Time. I didn't have that background for him. See, this was my first book by this author that I'd read, and I was delighted, to say the least. So obviously there's my big loving, glowing review of that, but I'm almost afraid to read Children of Time, just because maybe it's too different, and I'll come away disappointed from that. I don't know, but I thought this was great.
Maybe you shouldn't, because it'll make you into a Scrooge like me. No,
I don't think it will, though.
That's what I want.
And when we read Becky Chambers' book, Sam, I remember you describing the book as being radically inclusive, and I loved that description of it. And I feel like this book has an element of that. Maybe not radically inclusive, but from an empathy standpoint, I think that's a great observation. It's quite inclusive. All of the crew members of the Vulture God. I think that was the name of the ship, right? Mm-hmm. The Vulture God were very divergent. Some were a swarm creature, and some were heavily modified humans, and they were from all different walks of life and different backgrounds, and they were all living together and working together symbiotically.
All right. Well, great. The next book we are reading is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. So we have mentioned this book at least every other or every 3 episodes. It's come up in a bunch of interviews. I know, Adrian Tchaikovsky said he loved N.K. Jemisin. A few other people we talked to also mentioned her. This book and this series, I credit with bringing me back to sci-fi. So I read this in May of 2019, and yeah, it just got me back on the horse, reading a lot. I was really blown away by it, and it blew away a lot of other people too. So this trilogy sort of made history by winning the Hugo Award 3 years in a row for each one of the books, and the third book also won the Nebula. And it really was the best of the books, I'd say, too. It's rare that happens. It's usually the other way around. The first book is the best, and they sort of, mop it up in the next few. But this was a trilogy that was really going somewhere. And in the third book, they really she gives you everything you want that you've been wondering for and have sort of been craving to sort of really round out the whole world in the story. So it is dark. But I find this totally different. It never even occurred to me. Like, I am in this world all the time, every time I can get it. I don't mind it. It is dark and heavy, but it doesn't seem to like weigh on my soul. I'm just like totally sold on her narrative. Again, the pages turn themselves. The writing is excellent. And it is also a bit of a cross. So you might really like this too, Sam. It's definitely sort of sci-fi fantasy crossover. In fact, on the spine, I've noticed it says fantasy above Orbit, the publisher. But it's clearly been adopted by the sci-fi community and awarded and rewarded by the sci-fi community. And she's really made a name for herself with this book or this trilogy.
Well, it does have the classic fantasy novel like opening page of a map of the world, right? So you're like in a fantasy novel when there's like you see the map of all the different kingdoms. So
that's right.
But I'm game. I'm really looking forward to this. I got it teed up. I'm in the prologue already. So
hey, there you go.
So.
Yeah, trivia. Star Trek. Is this Star Trek? This is Star Trek, the original series?
This is the original Star Trek that I have here. So, first question. What is Mr. Scott's first name?
Montgomery.
Oh,
whoa!
Nice. That
Bam.
was quick.
Of course it's Montgomery.
I was going to say Scotty, and then I realized I was totally wrong.
Scotty Scott.
Scotty Scott.
Boom.
Okay, well that was good. That was like I'm going to have to maybe up the game here a little bit. Okay, what historic space event does the USS Enterprise bridge crew hear about via radio in the episode Tomorrow is Yesterday that lets them know they have arrived in 1969?
Landing on the moon.
Yeah. Okay. That was fast too. But maybe that was as I was reading the question, I didn't pre-read these. I'm just reading them randomly. I realized
you gave it away with 1969.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think I started the answer just before that came in.
Yeah, it was good.
Right around.
All right, super geeks. In the episode Balance of Terror, the USS Enterprise encounters a mysterious alien ship bearing a large bird design on its underside. What race of aliens piloted this ship?
It's not the Klingons, is it?
Nope.
Okay.
What was the name of the episode? Terror?
Balance of Terror.
Balance of Terror.
A mysterious alien ship bearing a large bird design on its underside.
I don't even know if I can name any species or alien species from the original series. Like that's
me neither.
There's only a couple big supervillains in the series, if that helps.
Yeah.
Couldn't be the Romulans.
Like
could it?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I guess it would have to be one of the big supervillains.
It's a Romulan bird of prey.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it a Klingon bird of prey?
It was, yes.
Uh-oh.
Oh. Boy.
Is the card wrong?
Well, you know what? Maybe we could have some viewer email us at our email address, which is in the description of this podcast, and tell us not whether or not they feel that Jar Jar Binks was a Sith Lord, but who had the bird of prey in the Star Trek series.
It was.
Well, it was definitely the Klingons, exactly. Yeah. So
you guys googling this right now? Are you wrecking our viewer response on this?
This is our heads.
Yeah, like so.
All
definitely, the bird of prey was a Klingon ship, but it is possible that in the original series, because Klingons look nothing like they do in other series from the original series. So It's possible that the bird of prey was used as a Romulan ship name, and then later on they said, "Wait a minute, let's change that to a Klingon ship name." Who knows?
I don't know. It's according to this, flea market board game. That's what I've got for you. But who knows? Maybe we'll get a reviewer response on that.
Oh my gosh, it is. I just Googled it. Romulan bird of prey. That's unbelievable. We are wrong.
No, the Klingon bird of prey is definitely.
I know it is definitely a Klingon bird of prey, but there is this Romulan bird of prey as well. Apparently, in the original series, 23rd century original series. I'll be darned. And there's Google Images here that you can look at it, and it is astoundingly cheesy. It looks like toilet paper rolls for warp nacelles, with a badly drawn underside of a bird with 2D legs sort of pinned against its lower side. Gotta be some of the worst graphics I've seen.
The 60s were good for that, though, right? Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, finally, in the episode The Man Trap, what vital element did the M113 creature take out of the bodies of its victims?
Spleen.
Carbon. I don't know.
No.
Oxygen.
No.
Element. Salt.
No.
Well, now salt is a compound. This game it's not an element. I got to get technical with this game.
And you may.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. Next episode, we are chatting with Cory Doctorow, and man, this guy is just so full of information, and he's so fun to talk to. Please join us for that one. You really will enjoy it. All right. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.